In this lesson, we are using X and Y intercepts to solve word problems. In each example, we will need to find the equation of the line, and then we're going to have to use the X and Y intercepts in order to solve the problem. So for number 1, your school drama club is putting on a play next month. By selling tickets for the play, the club hopes to raise $600 for the drama fund for new costumes, scripts, and scenery for future plays. Let X represent the number of adult tickets they sell at $8 each, and let Y represent the number of student tickets they sell at $5 each. What are the X and Y intercepts? What do the intercepts mean in context to the problem? So first we want to list out what we know. So here are the things that we know. We know that the club hopes to raise $600 total. They're going to do that by raising $8 for each adult ticket, and that's represented by X. So $8 per adult, which is X, and they hope to raise $5 per student ticket, and each student ticket represents Y. So if we were to create an equation from this information, that would look like $8 per adult ticket plus $5 per student ticket. That combined total, that's why we're adding them. Combined, we want that amount of money to be $600. So to find the X and Y intercepts now, we just need to use what we've already learned. To find the X intercept, you're going to plug in 0 for Y. So for this equation, if Y is 0, then that gives us 8x equals 600. So we would divide by 8. And that gives us 75. And we'll go ahead and find the y-intercept as well, and then we will interpret what that means for each of these. So the y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we'll plug in 0 for x. That gives us 5y equals 600. And 600 divided by 5 is 120. So our solution here, remember that we said that X represented the number of adult tickets and Y represents the number of student tickets. Well, if X was 75 when Y was 0, then that means that we need to sell 75 adult tickets if 0 student tickets are bought. And that's because X was 75 when Y was 0. So 75 adult tickets have to be sold if 0 student tickets are sold. Okay, now let's interpret the y-intercept. So y was 120, or the number of student tickets was 120, when the number of adult tickets, or x, was 0. So 120 student tickets must be sold. If 0 adults buy tickets. Okay, let's try example 2. You are running a concession stand at the basketball game. You sell hot dogs for $1 and sodas for 50 cents. At the end of the night, you want to make $200. Let H represent the number of hot dogs sold and S represent the number of sodas sold. Find the H and S intercepts. What do the intercepts mean in context to the problem? So again, we need to find out what we know. We know that you want to make a total of $200. And you're going to get that $200 by selling hot dogs for $1. And hot dogs, or the number of hot dogs, is H. And you're going to sell sodas for 50 cents. And soda, each soda is represented by S. So as an equation, you're going to sell $1 hot dogs, so $1 per hot dog, plus 50 cents per soda, and you want that total when you add them together to be $200. Now what do we need to find? That would be our x and y intercept, or H and S intercept. So the H intercept is going to happen when S equals 0. So 1H plus 0.5 S, and S is 0, equals 200. Okay, so 0.50 times 0 cancels out, and you have 1H equals 200. Well, you could divide by 1, but that doesn't change the value. So H, or the number of hot dogs, is 200. So that means if you don't sell any sodas, you have to sell 200 hot dogs in order to make $200. Okay, so if no sodas are sold, you must sell 200 hot dogs to make $200. Okay, now let's find the S-intercept. And that happens when H is 0. So if H is 0, that's $1 per hot dog, but if you don't sell any hot dogs, that would be 0, plus 0.50S equals 200. Well, 1 times 0 is 0, so you have 0.50S is 200. And you'll divide by 0.50 on both sides. So S equals, then 200 divided by 0.5 is equal to 400. So if you don't sell any hot dogs, but you want to make $200, you're going to have to sell 400 sodas because they're only 50 cents. So if no hot dogs are sold, you must sell 400 sodas in order to make $200. Example 3. A cookie jar starts off with 30 cookies in it, and each day 2 cookies are eaten. The number of cookies, C, is given as a function of D. C equals 30 minus 2D in the time of days. Find the D-intercept and determine what the D-intercept means in context to the problem. So we have this equation. C equals 30 minus 2D, and this kind of looks like slope-intercept form. We could rewrite it to look exactly like slope-intercept form. That would be negative 2D plus 30. So what this actually tells us is that the initial value is 30, and that value is going down by 2 per day. So the D-intercept. Well, the D-intercept would happen when C is 0. So if C is 0, what would be the D value? Well, we'd have to subtract 30 on both sides. And then we have negative 30 equals negative 2D, and then divide by negative 2. So that would give us positive 15 equals D. Well, what did D represent in the problem? D represented the number of days. Okay, well, how did we get that 15 days? What does this represent? So this tells us if the number of cookies are 0, that means they're all gone. Well, that tells us that after 15 days, the value of C, or the number of cookies, is 0. So if you eat 2 cookies per day and you started off with 30, then after 15 days, all the cookies are gone. And finally, number 4. A book has 240 pages, and each day 10 pages are read. The number of pages left, P, is given as a function of D, where P, the number of pages, is 240 minus 10D. The time is in days. Find the D-intercept and determine what the D-intercept means in context to the problem. So again, we have an equation, and it looks more like slope-intercept form. So we can make it slope-intercept form since that's what we're most familiar with. And now we want to find the D-intercept. So the D-intercept happens when P is 0. So if P is 0, then 0 equals negative 10D plus 240. So remember that this means that our initial amount of pages is 240, and that's going down by 10 per day. Well, to solve for D, to get the D-intercept, we would subtract 240 from both sides. So that's negative 240 equals negative 10D, and divide by negative 10. So that gives us 24 equals D. Well, what does this mean in context to the problem? Well, we wanted to know what was the D-intercept. We found that that's 24, but 24 what? It would be 24 days because D represented the number of days. So if P is 0, remember that P is pages. So after 24 days, the number of pages remaining would be 0 because we plugged in 0 for P. So after 24 days, there are no more pages to read.